She was 73 years old, a retired woman in Southwest Washington, living alone. The call told her she had won $22 million and a car. The man on the phone said he was from Publishers Clearinghouse, and there was just one thing standing between her and the money. Before they could release it, she needed to cover the taxes and the fees. So she paid. And when she paid, he called back. There was another fee and then another one after that. When she started to hesitate, he told her the FBI was recording the calls so she could be confident it was all official. She sent cash in FedEx envelopes to couriers here in the United States, who forwarded every dollar of it to him in Jamaica. This went on for 3.5 years. He called her thousands of times, and when she finally stopped picking up, he sent tow trucks to her house. He sent pizza deliveries, anything that would put someone at her door and get her back on the phone. She borrowed against her home, then she sold it. $600,000, and she never received $1 of a prize. There was no prize, there never had been. That is not a cautionary tale. That is a federal case, sentenced this past May in the Western District of Washington. The man who did it is in prison. I'm Sam, your senior fraud guide. And if you have a parent or a grandparent who lives alone and still answers the phone when it rings, this is the one I need you to understand. Because the sweepstakes scam does not work like the others. It doesn't frighten anyone. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't say your account has been compromised or that a warrant has been issued. It makes people happy. It hands a lonely person good news, and then it hands them a reason to keep the good news to themselves. That is what makes it so nearly impossible to interrupt from the outside, and it is why so many families don't find out until the money is already gone. Let me say one thing plainly before we go any further. Publishers. Clearinghouse is a real company and it is not doing this. It is being impersonated. Its name used because you recognize it and because you trust it. The company's own position could not be simpler. If you are expected to send a payment to claim a prize, you are being scammed. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you 3 things. How much money this is actually taking and who it is taking it from. How the trap is built, step by step in the order they use it, and the specific things you can look for in your own parent's home this week that tell you it has already started. Let me give you the size of this. Last year, Americans reported $194 million lost to lottery, sweepstakes, and inheritance fraud to the FBI. $136 million of that was lost by people over 60. 70 cents of every dollar. And the complaints split almost evenly. Seniors filed about half of them. So it isn't that older Americans get caught more often. It's that when they get caught, it costs them far more, just under $49,000 each. The Federal Trade Commission puts it a second way. Adjust for population, and an older adult is nearly 3 times more likely than a younger one to report losing money to a prize, sweepstakes, or lottery scam. And now the number that should bother you most. Research the FTC relies on found that fewer than 5% of people who get defrauded ever report it to any government agency at all. Roughly 1 in 20. So every figure I just gave you is the visible corner of something much larger. And the reason people don't report this particular one isn't fear, it's embarrassment. They believed they had won. Here is how the trap is actually built. It runs in the same order almost every time, and once you can see the order, you can see it coming. It starts with a list. These crews buy them. Lists of older Americans, bought and sold like any other mailing list. Federal prosecutors in Connecticut charged 6 people in June for doing exactly that. Then comes the good news. Not a vague prize, but a specific, enormous, life-changing number delivered by a warm and patient voice. Then the fee. And this is the whole scam right here in one sentence. Real prizes are free. Taxes, shipping and handling, processing, customs duties, it does not matter what they call it. If you have to send money to receive money, there is no money. Then the clock. It's a limited time release, and you have to act today, or the prize goes to the next name on the list. Then the escalation. The first payment is small enough to feel reasonable, and the moment it clears, there is another fee, and then another, each one justified by the last, each one larger, and every one of them protected by the money already spent. Nobody wants to walk away from $600. It gets much harder to walk away from $60,000. And the money leaves on rails that don't come back. Wire transfers, gift cards, payment apps, cryptocurrency, or cash in an envelope handed to a courier, the way that woman in Washington sent hers. Then there is one more turn, and it is the cruelest part of this. In that Connecticut case, some victims were told they had been entered into a sponsor program. Past winners, they were told, help cover the taxes for the next winner. It sounds generous. It sounds like an honor. What it actually did was turn the victim into the courier. Their money, their name, their bank account, now moving other victims' money for the crew. And when there is nothing left to take, the name goes on to one last list. The FTC calls them sucker lists, the names of people already known to have paid, and those lists get bought and sold too. Which is why, months later, a new voice calls and offers to recover everything that was lost, for a small upfront fee. Now, everything I've described happens on a telephone, in a house you don't live in. So the question that actually matters is this one. What can you see from the outside? Start with why this is hard. Amy Nofziger, who runs fraud victim support at AARP, describes what these criminals give a person. Something to love, something to do, and something to hope for. Sit with that for a second. Because if your mother is lonely, and a patient man calls her every day, and what he is calling about is the best news of her life, you are not competing with a scam. You are competing with the most interesting thing that has happened to her in years. Which is why the warning signs here are almost never distress. They are these. 1. The mail. Sweepstakes envelopes start arriving, and then more of them, because once a name is on one list, it gets sold on to the next. A sudden pile of contest mail is not clutter. It is a marker that the name has been bought. 2. The phone. It rings and rings at odd hours, and there is a caller she seems to know, but can't quite explain to you. 3. Money leaving in unusual shapes. Gift cards in a drawer, repeat trips to the post office or a shipping store, cash withdrawals that don't match how she has spent money her whole life, a new prepaid card she didn't used to have. 4. A deadline. Step 4 of that trap was the clock, so any urgency about money that comes with a date attached to it deserves a question. And 5, the one that is unique to this scam and the one families miss. Optimism. A parent who is suddenly, unaccountably hopeful about money and vague about why. Every other scam we cover leaves fear behind it. This one leaves good news, and nobody calls their children to report good news as a problem. So if you see it, here is how to raise it. And I want to be careful here, because the instinct is wrong. Do not open with, "Mom, you're being scammed." The research on this is consistent. Accusation makes people defensive, and a defensive person stops talking to you and keeps talking to him. A gerontologist who studies these victims puts it about as clearly as it can be put. It is not you against the victim, it is you against the criminal who is in her ear. Only about half of older fraud victims ever tell their own family, and shame is the reason. So do not give her a reason to be ashamed in front of you. Ask instead. Ask who's been calling. Ask what they said she won. Ask what she's had to send them, and let her hear her own answer out loud. Ask whether she's ever heard of a real prize that had to be paid for. You are not trying to win the argument today. You are trying to be the person she calls when she starts to doubt him. And if you want one rule in the house, one sentence that protects everyone in it, whether they watch this or not, make it this one. You never pay to win. If money has to go out before money comes in, there is no prize, not a tax, not a fee, not shipping, not customs, nothing. There is no version of this where a real prize costs you money to receive. Now, if you are watching this and you already recognize it, if the mail is already on the counter or the money has already gone, 3 things right now in this order. First, stop paying today, not after one more fee, not after the last one that finally releases it. There is nothing to release, and every dollar that goes out from here is simply gone. Second, call the bank or the card company using the number printed on the back of the card, not a number anyone gave over the phone. Tell them what happened and ask them to stop or reverse what they can. Third, report it. And I want to be precise about where, so I'm going to put each one on the screen for you, rather than read numbers out loud. Write them down or come back to this part. They'll be in the description underneath this video as well. The National Elder Fraud Hotline. It is staffed by people trained specifically for this, and it will walk you through the reporting itself, rather than just take a message. The Federal Trade Commission's fraud reporting site. This is the one that feeds the national data, including the numbers I gave you earlier in this video. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, because the money in these cases almost always leaves the country, and that is a federal matter. And the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline. That is the one to call when what you need is not a case number, but a person who has heard this 1,000 times and will not make anyone feel foolish for having believed it. And on that, if this has happened in your family, understand what it actually was. This was not carelessness, and it was not a lapse in judgment. It was a professional criminal operation with purchased lists, a written script, and people whose full-time job is this. They have run it thousands of times. Your mother ran into it once. She is not the reason it worked. If this was useful to you, and especially if you're going to send it to somebody, take a second and like it and subscribe to the channel. It costs you nothing, and it is the entire reason a video like this ever reaches the family that needs it before the money is gone instead of after. Stay vigilant, and until next time, protect yourself and protect the people you love.